Welcome to this episode of Stories That Shape Us. Thank you for joining me on the Stories That Shape Us journey. I am really excited that you're here. Thank you for everybody who watches the video, who listens to the podcast on the platforms that you listen to podcast on. Really appreciate you. Today, I want to talk about the number one thing that's keeping you from healing. What is that thing? I was reflecting today on, I did a really long journey, 4 hours to London and 4 hours back, plus just my time there. So I had a lot of time to think. I was on my own. So I had a lot of time, lots of thinking time. And that's my favorite thing to do, to just sit and people watch and just and the sun was out today, so it was a really nice day. And I could just sit and be. And so I had a lot of thinking time. And I was thinking about one of the things that sometimes stops people from healing. What are the obstacles that we have in our path that prevents us from healing, from making decisions that are big, from making decisions that might seem radical, that making decisions that prioritize you, and put yourself in the frame, if you will. Put yourself on your to-do list as women, and you might know this might be true for you, or maybe it was true for you at some point where you had long to-do lists, you had lots of things to do. And sometimes you weren't on those list of things to do, like self-care wasn't on the list of things to do for yourself, in whatever form it might be. Now, healing is a form of self-care. So if self-care, such as going to the hairdresser or a massage or any one of those things wasn't on your list of things to do, then a healing certainly wouldn't be. The conference wouldn't be on your list. Therapy wouldn't be on your list, or any one of those things that would provide deep and meaningful change. So why is that? Why is that? And I know most of our listeners are women, so I'm speaking to you. Some of our listeners are men. If you're male and you're listening to this podcast and you're married, then maybe bear this in mind as you see your wife or your partner doing too much. And I know too much for you might be a cultural thing. You might culturally is used to women doing a lot of stuff, but I want you to see it through a different lens. And so provide support, be a helper, help with things. And maybe not even help, because it's your home too. So be a part of the solutions around the home that helps to keep the home clean and neat and tidy and organized and orderly. So that thing. So what's that thing that's keeping us from healing? And I think the number one thing that keeps us from healing is acceptance. And we can get acceptance when we have space. Like today, I said I was on my own, so I had lots of gap. I had a big gap between arriving and my appointment, and I could just sit and be. Uh, and so that's time to think, to allow my thoughts, that sometimes we have thoughts that is running beneath the surface. They're there bubbling away in our subconscious, and they want to come to our conscious mind, but we're so busy that they're not allowed into our conscious mind. But whenever we stop and we're not busy and we don't have choices, we don't have anything to do, that's when the thoughts feel freedom, feel like coming to the surface. And so one of the things that I always think about you, I always think about people in my community and what you need and how I can best support you. What are the things that I can do that will be beneficial to you, that will help you on your journey of healing? And as I reflected on that, I realized that one of the things that perhaps you may have been here for a long time, listening to the podcast, you may have listened to all the episodes of the podcast. You may have listened to or watched lots of our YouTube videos. You may be on our email list. You may be reading our blog posts, or wherever we're writing. You may have been on this journey with us for a long time, but you still haven't made the decision to do anything about the traumas that you've experienced. And I believe one of the things that keeps us from doing some really important things is acceptance. And acceptance is layered. We have to have acceptance around many things. We have to accept that we might struggle with accepting support. That's acceptance. We might struggle with accepting gifts. We might struggle with saying receiving words of affirmation. We might struggle with giving encouragement. We might struggle with receiving it. We might struggle with many, many, many things. So acceptance will be layered, right? But accepting at the beginning that there is something that I need to do and I need to look at, I need to heal from this thing. Now, many things, as I say, stop us, depending on the circle that you're in and how what you experience is viewed. It might be minimized, and so you have learned how to minimize it. Maybe it was minimized when you were growing up, and so you learn how to minimize it yourself as you're an adult. You learn how to tell yourself that it's not important, but that's not true. It is important. And part of what got me on this reflective journey is a post I saw on LinkedIn that talks about how childhood trauma, how trauma, unprocessed trauma, or trauma in a parent or a caregiver, how it impacts the child that's growing up with them. Now, that it doesn't say that that child experienced any trauma of their own. It's just the unprocessed one for the parent, for the caregiver, that impacts the child. So that child can have anxiety problems. They can suffer also with post-traumatic stress disorder. They might they might struggle with a lot of developmental problems, attachment injuries, relational problems, mental health, all of the stuff that people that experience trauma suffer, struggled with. The person, the child growing up with a parent or a caregiver who hasn't accepted that this thing has happened and it needs healing will also have similar experiences. Now, for me, that is incredible. And I always say healing, we should do it for ourselves, and our children, our community will benefit. But if nothing is getting you to the place where you believe it's time to process, time to heal, if you've minimized for yourself living with a domestic abusive, with a partner who was abusive to you, then allow the children to get you to that place. Because even though the relationship may have broken down and you're not together now, there's an impact that you still need to process. If you have been minimizing the sexual trauma that you experienced when you were younger, and you said you're forgiven, and therefore because you're forgiven, you're okay, then investigate some more. Just allow yourself to learn the impact so that you can do it for the children. If you have ignored the fact that you were abandoned as a child, that abandonment creates lots of fear for you in relationships, and you struggle, then if you don't want to do it for you, do it for your children. And as I said, I really believe doing it for you is the best gift you can give to yourself. But first, we have to accept that this thing has had an impact on me. So the impacts may have been affecting you in many different ways, but you are so used to ignoring it that you're not able to hear what's bubbling beneath the surface. So I'm going to invite you today, this afternoon, whenever you listen to this, to stop, clear some space for yourself, an hour and a half, 10 minutes, go for a walk, sit in silence, allow yourself to connect with yourself and to connect with what's trying to come through but isn't allowed to, because you've not stopped to allow yourself to listen to you so you can hear. Acceptance is the first part. When we can accept that something is wrong, that needs doing, that needs looking after, then we can begin to do that thing. And you are worth it, because I know I've just listed some things that affects a child based on our unprocessed trauma, but they're happening to you, and you are important, you are worthy, and you are worth it. And it's important to do it for you so you can be free, so you don't have to live in fear, so you don't have to be trapped in a cycle and pattern that you know is harmful, so that you can break generational cycles, not only so that the generation below you can benefit, but so that you can be free, so that you can learn to take the burden off and you don't have to carry it. You can put it where it belongs, right? It's because you are important. When we accept the impact of something, that's when we can begin the work of unpacking, of processing, of healing. Take some space and some time to fully understand the impact of the experiences that you've had, and give yourself room, permission to start your journey of healing. Thank you for joining me in this episode of Stories That Shape Us. I hope you'll join me on the next story.